Welcome to the Purple Rock Podcast. I am your host, Rice, and with me for this summer series on Heroes versus Villains is my partner, Beans.
Which is ironic because, surprise, I don't like beans.
I knew that, and I knew you would ruin the whole thing because you refuse to not be you, and that's unfortunate when it comes to food. But I don't care. We're Rice and Beans. Fist bump. We're here to talk about the 7th through 10th episodes. That's not right, 8th through 10th episodes of Survivor Heroes versus Villains. And I think probably the best way to start off is just like they started off with this set of episodes. Who do you think was more broken up about the loss of Rob, me or Jeff Probst?
Man, I mean, after listening to you talk about Rob last week, I would have thought you had that in the bag, but my word, have we ever seen anything like that besides obviously the first time we watched this? Like that, I'm speechless.
It was a little embarrassing, and that was coming from me. Like I was like, dude, it's okay, man. He was voted out of the game. You know?
That's the objective
of the game. Just bring it down a bit. You know, Rob's awesome and all, but I don't know if this will spell, the doom of civilization, which is kind of what Probst's, intro to that episode was. And some of it, you get. It doesn't seem like the brightest move for a tribe trying to win, but he also kind of knows how this thing ends. So, top back a bit. And it didn't end there because we'll skip ahead just a moment. He had a few thoughts on it when they went to tribal council.
Yeah, and in my notes about this, I had words that I shouldn't say on the podcast because he goes off on wow, you guys made this decision, and Courtney is still right there. Like, what? What are you thinking? And Courtney, how do you feel about the fact that you're there? And she's like, I didn't vote for them. Like, what do you want? What was she supposed to tell them? You know what, you guys, I'm very skinny, and you should probably, if you're going to attack this alliance, you should probably go for me. It just makes more sense because we all know what this game is really about is physical strength.
And survival, Emma.
Yes.
I'm going to do that every episode.
That's
we should just drop the charade. That was, I think, one of Courtney's great moments of this season was, because it wasn't even a question directed at her. She was just like, enough with the slander, Probst or Jeffrey.
Yes.
Which
Thanks,
is great.
Jeffrey.
And it's like, I didn't even vote for the guy. What the hell are you giving me crap for? But Probst was taking that really hard. And, I don't know if he's still over it. You have to go to great lengths to overcome the hurt feelings that Jeff Probst had over the loss of Boston Rob. And if you listen to the internet, what you do to make yourself feel better about that is fix the season for him to win.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, that's pretty much the last we're going to talk about him. Because unlike Probst, I'm over it. I'm cool. Of course, maybe it's because many years later I do know that he wins. But let's talk about somebody who actually did go home in these set of episodes. And that's Coach. He does not get the same sad treatment of the loss of Coach. Let's just start off with the big question. Who is more responsible for Coach's ouster? Was it Sandra for putting the idea in Russell's head, or was it the Heroes because they started talking about a women's alliance?
I mean, I know this is kind of a cop-out answer, but I do feel like it's a little column A, little column B. I think they're symbiotic, without one, you don't have the other. I think, it's like, oh, the how funny, the Heroes think there's a women's alliance. And then Coach is asking me, if we got rid of him, it would really fall in line with that whole women's alliance thing. That'd be a nice little bonus.
Yeah, so I'm of the same mind exactly. I think there's a current of people who do not want to give Russell credit that he was just completely tricked by Sandra, and by the flip side, there's people that don't want to give Sandra any credit. And both of those sets of people are wrong, which I love telling people they're wrong when they can't answer. But yeah, I think
it is one of your top 10 hobbies.
Top 5 even. Top 5, baby.
I go as far as to say top 2, actually.
We won't talk about what the top 1 is because it's just not polite in joint company.
Okay, now I'm concerned. Can I bump it back down to top 5?
It's probably comic book related. But anyway, I I think Sandra totally put the idea in Russell's head, and I believe that's supported by the edit. And obviously editors can do wonderful, magical things with chronology and all of that, but multiple times in that episode, and then in the next episode, you get, Russell talking to us and to his partners about that possibility, about that Coach is coming after him. Now, I guess the one little caveat is, and I don't know if Sandra knew that when she was putting the idea in Russell's head, Coach does kind of float the idea of going after him. So,
right. Like the thing is, it's like Sandra goes off about how stupid Russell is for like following, and I'm like, I mean, most of what she said is true. Like, Coach does regret letting Rob go home, and like she is right that Russell doesn't know what he's getting into with her, and we see that throughout the rest of the season. But that also, kind of shows, despite, without the Sandra of it all, like just because it was a good move on Sandra's part doesn't inherently mean it was also a bad move on Russell's part.
Yeah, because I think, the bonus of the heroes, totally showing their cards and all that. Yeah, if you're Russell, it's like, well, I don't need Coach anymore. I needed him then. And yeah, that's awesome. 2 birds, 1 stone. He's, coming after me. Frankly, as Courtney will point out, actually, I think it's not in any of the episodes. It's in her day after. But yeah, Russell is just threatened by all men that don't, make him feel like the big man. So he's probably going to come after Coach anyway. But I do think that Sandra probably forced the issue, that if she didn't do what she did, then maybe Coach survives an episode, simply because, because I think Russell probably did want to take out more of Rob's alliance to begin with. I think one other thing that doesn't really get talked about is Parvati can't stand Coach. And it's probably to Parvati's benefit to not vote out Courtney. So I think it all came into play, but
Parvati can't stand Coach and wanted to keep Courtney around forever. She's really a girl after my own heart.
Exactly. You say Courtney's your favorite, but I think sometimes it might be Parvati.
Oh, no. Like, this is, I mean, honestly, like how I would describe it if we were really narrowing it down is that Courtney is my favorite character. Parvati is my favorite player.
Yeah. And also, people are allowed to like more than one thing.
Right. Yeah. Crazy.
I mean, you're only allowed to have one favorite Survivor podcast. And that, of course, would be RJP, but you can like other ones.
We are your favorite non-RHAP Survivor.
That's right. The amateur status is what we've been trying to capture.
We still want that banner, Mark.
That's right. For the podcast Olympics, we need to keep our amateur status, so we can get that Zika. But I mean, I think it's worth bringing up because this is the move that people, defenders of Sandra, will point to. Of like the move she makes in Heroes versus Villains, and I think it's fine. I think it's true. I think she had a part in ensuring that she would not get eliminated by this game. She didn't sit back and let it happen, because if it even happened without her at all, maybe it's totally the heroes, which I don't think it is. No, I don't agree with that, but I'll allow for that for the sake of argument. She still went out and did something. Whether it was effective or not, it proves that she's not what some people like to think, the person that just sits back and lets things happen and, lets the arrows fly beside her. She is not somebody who just floats. She does something. She does things to try to better her situation. She's, got the information, everything. As you say, what she told Russell was kind of true. But I think that's part of her strengths. Just how she's able to convince people to her side is by telling her elements of truth that she knows in a way that's favorable to her. So I do think that, this is one of the feathers in her cap. But I also think, people who are trying to count up moves to validate her win are probably not recognizing what winning in Survivor really requires, because the person who has the most moves in this season is without a doubt Russell, and no sane person argues that he deserved to win this season. But yeah, more on Sandra is that I think this is the start of the Sandra edit of the season. And I said I wasn't going to talk about him, but just briefly, now that they're done with the story of Rob, we get the story of Sandra emerging. And in many ways, this is echoed many years later in the Natalie Anderson edit.
Oh, yes.
So, do you agree? I think, is this where the Sandra star starts to shine?
Yeah, I mean, we got some comments about like not talking about Sandra enough in our first 2 episodes. It's like there really wasn't that much to say. Like we like Sandra. We're like on this like anti-Sandra bias. We don't want to talk about her. We only want to talk about Russell. It's like we've been very begrudgingly giving praise to Russell. We would love to lavish the praise on Sandra, but not everyone comes out swinging right away because not everyone has to, and that's fine.
Yeah, and like as we said, like Sandra, even in the first bunch of episodes, she wasn't completely sitting back. She wasn't doing aggressive moves because she was in a good alliance and she didn't need to. But she was the one that set the tone with the whole idol speech. Now, ultimately, it didn't work, right? I mean, it was a mistake. It was her mistake with Rob, but it was a good play. It was a good try. But yeah, I think throughout here, and what I think we're going to see throughout the rest of the season, as I recall, and we'll find out, is you're always going to get reminded that Sandra's out there listening. Sandra's out there, plotting. And obviously the plot is to remove Russell, which again, her detractors use as a answer why she didn't deserve to win, that she lost in that goal. But one can have multiple goals in Survivor.
Yeah, I'm sure her other goal was to win $1 million.
Yeah, we never get the indication that she's going all kamikaze about it. I think she probably really thinks that she could, knock out Russell and win. And again, did people vote for her just because she tried to knock out Russell? Sure, but good on her for trying to knock out Russell, then, and it worked out even better that she didn't. But yeah, I think we always go back to what she's saying, and a lot of it is to remind us that Russell is a stupid head. And I think that's important because I think what also starts happening here, this is the triumph of Russell Hantz. He is taken down, not the dragon, although I guess he does that too. Is he the dragon? No, Brendan's the dragon. He's the dragon slayer.
Dragon.
He slays the dragon slayer.
Common misconception, because it's really the dragon's monster.
Also, yeah, Frankenstein is the name of the monster. Oh, look who we got. We got another Survivor fan here.
Hi.
Hi. I'm a boy.
You're a boy, yes.
You're a boy. You sure are.
Look at my car.
Yeah, that's
Look
a great.
at my car. My car's sticking out.
Yeah, that's great radio as well. we got a Civil War thing here going.
My
Iron Man.
tongue's white. My tongue's white.
Your tongue's white?
Yeah.
Uh-oh.
Well,
we better see a doctor about that.
How are you, Christopher?
Good.
Good.
So, Christopher, who do you like? Sandra or Russell?
Iron Man.
Iron Man.
Iron
Perfect.
Man. Good choice. Oh,
honestly,
man.
I think he would probably win Survivor. Against
probably
these
did very
guys.
well. Although I don't know if people would vote for him at the end because he already has a lot of money.
It's true. You know
what?
What
do you think, Christopher?
We have a whole breakdown, but we should figure out what Avenger would win. What do you think, Christopher? What Avenger would win?
Iron Man.
There you
We've
go.
established that. Yeah. Big Iron Man. That means that his favorite is John. Then how does that make you feel, Andy?
John probably doesn't even know who Iron Man is.
No, but he's talking.
Please.
All right, Christopher, where's your mom? You ready to go to bed? You should have gone a long time ago.
Not yet.
No, not yet. You
Not
want
yet.
to keep doing this, huh? Look, we had 2 viewers ago, and then you walked in, and they were probably going to leave anyway.
Iron Man and Cat Michael, same team.
That's right. We are. And what team is that? Are we the heroes?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
We'll beat the villains, right?
Yeah.
Could you say goodnight to Emily?
Can it, Emily?
Good night, Christopher.
Good night, buddy. There you go. Live TV. Can't beat that. But yeah, I think it's something that we want to look at throughout the rest of the episodes. Just how it contrasts Russell with Sandra. Because and maybe this is my own bias, so I'd encourage people to let me know otherwise. But I feel like they never miss a chance to make Sandra, present as somebody who is the counter force. Whereas I also think they don't miss many opportunities to subtly show us Russell doesn't have the level of control he thinks he has. And I think one of the instances that comes up, and we'll discuss it later, is when Parvati finds the idol, obviously. But before we get to that, let's, I guess, keep going in chronological order. And
Imagine that.
so we're wondering, is it Sandra's big play or is it the heroes? And the heroes assume there's a women's alliance. Is that a signal of them being, big men heroes, or is it kind of like a legitimate line of thinking?
I mean, I think if it was just, let's say this is not an all-star season, right? Mm-hmm. And this is happening. Although honestly, that would probably be the case even still. But if it's an all-star season or not an all-star season, and it's only men being voted out, including some strongmen, because obviously, if they had lost Russell the second time instead of Tyson, and so it was Randy and Russell, like no one would be like, I bet there's a women's alliance. They'd be like, okay, they decided they were weaker than Courtney, whatever. But in this case, not only do they have that, but they also have Parvati on that side. And what is the last thing everyone saw Parvati do?
The only successful women's alliance in Survivor history.
In a non-gender split. Well, I guess at the time, yes.
Yeah, I mean, I guess, because Vanuatu women were not successful. I think I read that somewhere on Sucks.
It's such a good winner, Andy. Didn't you love that winner of that season? Isn't he
Nobody has controlled a season like the guy who was kept around because he sucked more than everybody else he was associated with. I like to think, like, it's fun to make them seem stupid, and I do think that it also, like, fits into their narrow worldview of, Parvati, the Jezebel manipulator. The only reason why you'd ever lose men is because of women. Sure, I mean, there's probably some of that feeding in, but, like, if I was trying to figure out why it's 4 men in a row and it's Tyson and Boston Rob, the people that were kicking our butts, I'd probably be like, you know what? It's probably a women's alliance. Like, I think it is a perfectly natural assumption to jump to. Maybe not the one you need to hang your entire game on, but like, if I was kicking her around,
I wouldn't mention it out loud.
Exactly.
In front of them.
So I mean, there's room to still feel like Rupert and JT are dumbasses.
Keep it to yourself, Rupert. Keep it to yourself.
But if I was back at camp, like, whoa, can you believe they voted out the guy that's been beating us in challenges? Yeah, it must be a women's alliance. They must not care about the tribal part, and this is what's going on. I'd probably allow for the outside possibility that, like, this Russell guy I don't know. Well, I should say, I would like to think I would allow for the possibility that Russell's involved. But, I mean, Randy, Tyson, Rob, Coach, it kind of seems like a women's alliance.
Yeah, because you would think, especially since Randy's the first one they vote out, that just because they're voting out men, it doesn't mean that, like, I think, and we've seen this before, they will choose to keep, you'll try to keep a stronger man around because you still would like to win challenges, and stay strong and not be only down, because if you're down numbers at the merge, it doesn't matter if you have a women's alliance, the other women on that side might not be, like, quick to jump over. You don't know them. And like, that would require betraying people, which is never a good idea, yada, yada, yada. So, like, it's pretty reasonable to think that if they were, just voting out men for the sake of being men and not for any other aspect of them, that they would vote out someone like, like Russell first. They'd go Randy, they'd go Russell, and then, then they'd have to decide between, the 3 of them at that point. And maybe that's when you would vote out Rob, once you get rid of the weaker men, then maybe you go for the threat if you're a women's alliance, thing in that stage.
Yeah, but with still Coach being around and all of that. So I think it's a fine assumption, but that leads us into the bigger question is what they do with that information. And that leads to one of the bigger moments in Survivor history. What the series likes to present is a momentous moment and perhaps the dumbest moment in history. That would be JT giving his idol to Russell. Is it the dumbest move ever, or in the discussion? Because we already figured out what the dumbest move was last week.
Yeah, so this is something that we've been talking about for, like, years. I'm not even sure when it first came up, but I feel like it stems back from our days in the AV club. Was it a great idea? No, probably not. Very risky. But I think the thing is, and I sort of discussed this when we talked about Tyson's move, that in measuring a dumb move, to me, it's not just whether, it costs you the game, it's also what's the best possible outcome. And this was a very like high risk, high reward situation. And, because they were naive about the variable they didn't understand, being Russell. But, if it had worked out, it would have worked out really well. Like it would have, it's sort of like, can't believe I am alluding to this season, but sort of the South Pacific thing of like voting out Ozzy because they know he'll just win at Redemption Island and they can like get him back. It's sort of, this weird thing that could totally backfire, but like if it works, it helps them out.
Yeah, and I think, some people say, oh, we got someone back again. I'm going to try and get rid of him for good. Just 1 second here.
But I want.
Not get rid of him for good. That sounds horrible.
But no, I want the child to stay here forever. So it's just me.
Would have been in bed a while ago. Oh no, people saw my secret.
So Courtney's great, right? I'm just going to talk about that. She didn't get as big of an edit this time as she would, probably because she didn't last very long, and there were just so many more personalities on Heroes versus Villains, right. And she's just sort of
I knew I should have wore pants.
Time filler instead. And oh, thank God Andy is back. Okay, I just kind of talked about Courtney for a little while.
Good. Oh, there we go.
Yeah.
I wasn't planning on listening to that segment anyway.
Right, so it worked out. Although I will have more to say.
Yes, but no, like I think some people say that in defense of JT that he nor anybody else knew Russell, right? One of the big criticisms is why would you ever give Russell Hansen an idol? But honestly, I don't know if any intelligent people really make that criticism. We all, I think, know that nobody knew who Russell was. Right. And I think to your point, that's why you don't do it. Like if he's giving it to like Coach, that makes sense. He knows Coach. He has some level of trust for Coach. Maybe you don't take such a huge risk on such a complete unknown variable. Now,
Coach would have been a great idea, actually.
Yeah, I mean, they needed one more. Well, if he didn't have the idol,
right? He didn't have it, and it would have only worked if Coach had somehow lasted. But like in theory, because that would have definitely worked. Coach thinks he's a hero. Coach trusts JT. Coach would feel so honored that they gave him an idol. Like it would have worked perfectly then. Yeah, like if Tyson is the final guy and you're going on the list, but the guy you don't know at all to make this big jump, and so is it as dumb as they make it? No, I think it's defensible. I understand the thinking. She's trying to put his thumb on the scale and bring over the person who their evidence and their assumption thinks is the person on the outside. But again, it's just an assumption. Even if you realize or allow for it to being a good assumption, you don't know. And here's the thing: like the margins weren't so slim that he needed to take as big a risk as he did. He keeps his idol. You're tied because I believe they did that. Well, I guess they did a reward challenge, so they don't know for sure that they'll win the next challenge. But frankly, if the heroes don't win, then this doesn't really help them that much. And what would help them more is having that idol, and then you could give it to Russell after you've met the guy, if it comes down to that, or you try to swing him then. But it's like then you're going in 5-5, Try more things then. Maybe there's somebody in their side you can flip, or maybe you can play the idol properly. Ironically, go. Oh, sorry. It's just, they come in 5-5. There's been all this talk about who has relationships with who on the other side. Try to pull one of them in. Almost pretty much everybody but Russell, someone has a relationship with. Even if Courtney was still there, she not only has Amanda, obviously, but probably knew JT socially. I'm not quite sure on the timeline of her dating Steven, but it's certainly possible.
To back you up there, in Ponderosa, he talks about how Courtney and Coach are two of his best friends. He has a relationship. So and then also maybe give because I think JT has said that he knew that he'd be the target because former winner, athletic guy, or whatever. Right. Well, it would have been nice to have an idol then. For one thing, if you knew you were going to be the target, then just play an idol on yourself, and then you win. Yay! You don't need Russell at all. Also, if you knew that, and you were going to be the tie, you're like they're going to all vote for me, and it's a tie. Well, guess what? You're immune, buddy. Everybody but you is drawing rocks. So I think, there was reasons to do it. I understand the logic he was going for, and that's why I can't consider it as dumb a move as other ones, because there's been moves where it's just like there's no logic to this. This doesn't work out anymore. Exactly. If this works out, you're right. JT will look great. It'll be one of these huge risks that somebody takes and they pull off. But the problem is, it's just the risk was unnecessary. The variables were too unknown. You would never see this in a complete newbie season. And that's how they should have treated this, is that you're giving it to the one person you have no information on, other than the fact that he is titled a villain.
Yeah.
And that, they had to boot other significant villains to make room for this guy. So yeah, I think, it's defensible in a way that keeps it from being, maybe one of the 5 or 10 dumbest moves ever. Maybe not 10. But it's still a bad idea. And how funny was it when Russell and Parvati are reading the note?
I mean, everything about it is funny, because this is like a situation, where there's just, we do know Russell. They don't, but we do. And so there's a lot of, even like before it actually happens, there's a lot of just dramatic irony, because we know that that Russell's in charge. Like, we already know that. We know Russell's character and how he is, and you don't, as he says, you don't give Russell a handsome idol. Reading it was great. The Cole, you read your letter there. You read your letter to Russell, buddy. Was great.
Yeah, I love how Rupert is like, make sure you say that's your chance to prove that you're not a villain.
Yeah. Oh, which is probably the line they laughed at the most. And then also all of Russell like hamming it up for the villain or for the heroes, like at challenges and stuff. Like, I mean, when he's sitting out the challenge and JT's like doing the thing, he's like, hang in there. Thank you.
Yeah. It's some of Russell's finest acting. I have to give it to them that, because honestly, usually Russell actually kind of blows his whole spot just because of who he is, and it's probably because of the limited interactions that he was able to keep it up. I think once people spend a few hours with the guy, they kind of get it. And I say that as somebody who recognizes that he is able to affect a lot of moves and change things, but I think a lot of that is through like blunt force trauma. It's not actually because he necessarily fools people a lot. Is that everybody who's with Russell knows he's full of it, but they just understand how they can use that to their advantage, or he pushes them to things where they're uncomfortable. But here, he sold it so well, right there at Colby, he's all like, But just getting back to what Rupert's reaction is, that's just so great, because it's just so reflective of Rupert's such tiny, narrow worldview that like he thinks that would be the closing deal. That they're like, oh yes, I'll finally get to be seen as a hero, which obviously is the greatest thing ever. This is
all I've wanted.
And it's like that Rupert thinks that this will like both like entice him to make him feel better, and maybe be that kicker if he's like on the fence of like, oh yes, this is my opportunity, otherwise I'll look bad. Oh, Rupert. And then, I mean, it's funny, the reactions. It's funny when, even when Danielle, nobody can believe it because it's unbelievable.
They are what? Yeah, and Parvati, like, adding in the different, that terrible Parvati who's clearly controlling everything. And then, like, XOXO, your BFF.
Yeah. And I think to give some of the heroes a little bit of credit, I think Amanda kind of knew that maybe this wasn't the best idea in the world, but it wasn't her idol. She didn't have that much to say.
Yeah, and she, because when she and Candace talk about it, and it's funny because Candace, and maybe it's just because Candace the mutineer figured, I'll probably flip later anyway, not too worried about the heroes being 5 strong. She's like, yeah, like, Moon might be wrong, but then JT wouldn't have the idol, and we were worried about JT having the idol.
Yeah, which also kind of shows some of the narrow views.
The devil have. Candace. The devil you know.
And I mean, to be a little fair to Candace, this is a group of 3 to 4 other people that were waiting to vote her out and wish they had instead of was it like James? Yeah,
James.
So that's why you don't treat people like that. But
Yeah.
no, it's whether it is the dumbest move ever, debatable. Whether it is hilarious, I think without a doubt, so funny.
So
Which is
funny.
the great part of this season. So many amazing strategic moves, but also things that are just straight up entertaining. So yeah, they get the idol, and now it's time to vote out Courtney, because of course they did not win a challenge.
No.
Didn't you hear Prope's intro to the episode previous? But here's an interesting question, because it's something I didn't really remember until rewatching. Parvati tried to push the vote off of Courtney towards Sandra, and that's kind of like me like wondering, would she have won if she did that? Because obviously she loses to Sandra.
Yeah, and I mean, I think she really might have, if we assume that Courtney ends up in the final 3. And I would think, considering how dismissive Russell was of Sandra's chances, you got to think he feels that way about Courtney, if not more. And, Parvati likes Courtney. So she's like, yeah, I'll bring you along. It'll be fun. I'm not too threatened by you, so I might as well bring you along. Like, it's possible that she pulls a China and picks up a couple votes still, but I'm trying to think, like JT might vote for Courtney just out of, like, friendship. This time Sandra will vote for Courtney instead of the other way around. Yeah. Probably.
But here's the thing, like, what Courtney won't have is she won't be, like, constantly trying to work with the heroes, I don't believe. I think she probably not, kind of read the land. I don't think the heroes would have opened the door, because they didn't anyway, even though Sandra kept trying. And then so I think Courtney would have fell in line. And I also think she wouldn't have socialized as much with the heroes, because she doesn't enjoy socializing with people she doesn't like. People that, seem kind of...
I mean, she might hang out with, Amanda, because she hates her a little less than she hates everyone, and Amanda might mistake that for friendship.
Sure, but I also don't think there would have been that much opportunity, right?
Yeah.
Because I think Amanda is still the next person out after JT, right? Like, I don't think Courtney's presence as opposed to Sandra's really changes that. So I do think, I'm obviously not criticizing Parvati for not stepping up for this.
No, that's definitely one of those situations we talk about where it's like, you try to, you see if you can get the tide to change, but, like, if you can't, it's not the hill to die on.
Yeah, it's just shows sometimes, the thin margin between victory and defeat, because maybe Courtney doesn't get to the end, but I don't know if there's another person that would have been near the end that would have been so clearly favored. Maybe Jerry is able to beat Parvati, but I think it would be a lot closer. And I think also that the heroes wouldn't have had the good feelings and the rooting for interest, and then also the rooting against interest that I believe they had against Parvati and Russell. So kind of interesting. So before I guess I send you off to it, I should just say I also enjoyed Courtney. I think she's just funny. And I think, it's unfortunate there wasn't as much of her this season, but I'm not one of those persons that complains about the cornucopia of options in all-star seasons and then whines that, like, my fave didn't get this domination. She ultimately is somebody who didn't make the merge, her story didn't matter to the overall narrative. So, you win some, you lose some. They can't develop everybody, but, and also her star turn is yet to come and her great value to the show. But final thoughts.
Well, one thing is that, as we discussed, Parvati was trying to, keep Courtney, and we see, this is basically the only scene that really shows, there's bits where you see Parvati kind of hanging out with Sandra and Courtney, but it's always in the background. But this is, the one scene where she sort of says, like, I wanted to keep you around forever. Like, she talks about, like, that they have a bond. Like, she says, like, Courtney and I, really bonded. Like, I really like Courtney and stuff like that. Like, they are clearly developed a friendship. And that means that Russell kept this for being the season of Parvati and Courtney. And for that, I will never forgive him. Of all the terrible things Russell has done, this is clearly the worst. Because can you imagine how great that would have been? And like if there's no Russell, if it's like Shane or Penner or whoever it was going to be again, who still bring a good amount of entertainment, but there would probably be so much more of like Parvati and Courtney just making fun of Coach, which is all I want in life.
Yeah, and I linked to a few scenes of them doing just that. I believe, Courtney, I think, and there is a bonus scene or a secret scene from way back then that are still online of Parvati doing the same, just roasting Coach and talking about how much she can't stand him, and that could have made the main thing
together.
Yes, no, actually, early in the season, I don't think we mentioned on the podcast, but we kind of mentioned that like Russell really did kind of screw some stuff up for us. I think he ultimately provided a lot of entertainment and made the season pretty epic, his fall and the various things he does. Right. But without him, gumming up the works, we could have had the trash talkiest tribe of all time. Yeah, so as you say, Parvati and Courtney, Sandra, Boston Rob, Tyson, like we missed out on that. We get a little of it in the early episodes, but if they had carried on throughout, like imagine what they would have had to say about Rupert and his bananas, and the fall of Colby Donaldson and Coach, of course, Coach, because he wouldn't have gotten voted out so early either, so there would have been so much more making fun of him. Now obviously the one flaw is that Parvati might have just gotten voted out even without
that. Is true,
but it could have been the funnest tribe ever if only Russell wasn't so, interested in, furthering his agenda to try and win Survivor.
What a jerk. Yeah.
He took that away from us and we'll never have it again. So Parvati finds the idol, and that's pretty great. And what I think's interesting about this, and I touched on this earlier, is the scene itself goes out of its way to show how Russell doesn't really know what's going on, to the point where, and like I'm pretty sure it's a constructed thing, like I don't think it actually happened that way, but they show just Russell just sitting there alone on a beach, just kind of looking off while they're hunting. I doubt those two things happen at the same time. And then they show him going after them, and they're like, oh, we better get out of here, and then just walking on past like nothing ever happened. And I do think that's indicative that Russell, I think they're trying to show us that Russell isn't the mastermind he necessarily thinks he is, because whoever could be that much.
Yeah, and you get a lot of confessionals from Parvati saying, oh, he may be the king, but like I'm the queen, and which of course makes me think of there's a Tumblr post, I believe, that, or maybe it's a tweet that was screen captured posted on Tumblr. Who can tell these days? But it's like, oh, what's a queen without her king? It's like, well, historically more powerful.
Yeah.
Or of course. Oh no, you go.
But yeah, and they mention this throughout, that Parvati, and she mentions this many times, and obviously it's because it will also become a part of the story later, that Russell doesn't need to know this. He's on a need-to-know basis, and she says that episode, she says it the next episode, to the point where, well, obviously when she plays it, he thinks she's got some explaining to do. And I think, you couple that with what, Sandra can always say about him while he's completely overlooking the threat she poses. And I do believe the editor were putting there subtly, so laying the groundwork that Russell is not the king of this island, and there's many reasons why he did not win in a way that, they probably didn't do in Samoa. So do we think the merge was delayed on purpose? Do you think that was supposed to happen earlier? Because we get this season 2 jury members that didn't even make the merge, which is not unprecedented, but still a little odd. We get the villains so confident that there's going to be a merge that they pack up camp and show up to a reward challenge. And I think a lot of people do think that they were trying to even the score for the heroes. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, it's not, as you said, it's not unprecedented, but has it happened besides Cook Islands where pre-merge have been on the jury? And then because Cook Island, which also has a lot of talk about production interference and stuff, with the double vote outs and all of this, and the final 3 and everything, like the first time to the final 3, and not only do you have a late merge with people with pre-merge on the jury, but that first challenge they do has been a challenge before. And it's been a reward, or
Been an individual challenge, yeah. Not a
it
team
has been
challenge.
an individual challenge, you know, and the whole like matchup of it all is certainly not how they normally do team challenges. Like you might have matchup, but it's not like all happening at the same time, you know. It's matchups like fighting or bowling, apparently.
Yeah, I think that lends some credence. I will, a quick note, say that I loved the matchups as somebody who's doing brackets. Like, if I was given those, 8 people, or was it 10?
10.
10,
Wait.
yeah, because Russell sat.
Yeah.
If I was given those 10 people, I probably would have made those exact matchups. So, yeah, just like if in a bracket.
Yeah.
Because they all had some kind of relation to each other. Yeah, maybe. I mean, here's the problem with, saying straight out that, well, obviously the biggest problem we don't know, but saying they were trying to make it evened up for the heroes is it could, if it doesn't work out the way you want, it could be so much worse. Yeah, like you're probably better off now with just one down, seeing if they could swing, than if the villains win that challenge. That's it. You're done. There's no interest. Like the JT's whole letter isn't going to become a thing. So maybe. It's certainly possible that they delayed it at least a little bit. I will say, if they delayed it, it might not have just been to, give the heroes a chance. Could have been because they like making people look stupid when they presume what's going on. And I think especially Probst probably gets a little uppity about it, like even if like Colby tries to tell him to start the challenge instead of giving him chocolate. So maybe when they heard that they're all packing up, it's like, nope, we're not doing it now. Because when they get to the challenge, he really messes with them, right?
Yeah.
Everybody prepare to drop your assumptions.
Expectations.
Expectations. You're right. Yeah.
I had the right word because I'm smart. Another quick note on this challenge, just sort of about how sort of a running theme I've had is how much fun the editors have been having. Is that the villains are really strategizing with their matchups and thinking like, okay, like this challenge, like, it's probably better if you're smaller, like to do that. And, Russell said, yada, yada. And they go, and they're guys with big egos. Jump cut, hero camp, Rupert, I'll be great at this. And JT's like, actually, like, I've done this before. And no, he's like, well, if you want me to be last, then I'll be the last one. And then sure enough, he's out.
Yeah, Broken Toe Rupert is like, clearly I'm the strongest. I could never be ranked anything but the strongest.
Probably like, I mean, I guess they don't know for sure what the challenge is, but it seems like they had a decent idea. But I don't know. It was.
Yeah, and then JT's like trying to soften, Rupert's ego, which I'm assuming is probably like a full-time job for anybody in an alliance.
He's like, Rupert. It's the people with smaller feet who do well at
this. It's like, I'll be last if you want me to be last. The guy who won this challenge, admittedly against not that many people, but still.
And that reminds me, because JT did this challenge before, just one more note about Courtney being great. And she's like, they did this challenge when Coach did this challenge. He fell and was all like, which was, his dramatic, like, oh, I don't have my bet. And Taj just sort of giving him the ego boost out, like, oh, if your back is out, you shouldn't be doing this. It's, don't hurt yourself because of this. And he's like, I now have permission to fail. God, and then collapses, and it's so great. And Courtney made fun of him, and it's wonderful.
But yeah, I do think like there's crystal on that meat about whether they were trying to delay it. Actually, one thing I think the producers probably did to interfere is if they didn't have like a notebook as part of their luxury items or whatever. Yeah. As soon as they heard that JT wants to write a note, I'm sure people were scrambling around. Get this man a pen. Get him a note. We need this to happen. This dumbass is really going to do this.
Get the tribal council pen. I don't care.
Stat. If I don't see a pen in 5 minutes, you're all fired. Because, oh my God. Like, when they heard that his plan was to do that, they probably all just nearly passed out from their erections. But oh God,
it had to be similar to the effing stick, and that like, oh, Eliza's going for it, if you do not catch this on camera, you are fired.
And I guess one way that you, if you of the mind that they were trying to even up the heroes, it's actually a pretty easy way to almost guarantee yourself the heroes are going to win. Is you just don't put a puzzle at the end of the challenge.
Yeah.
I don't actually remember what the immunity challenge was, though. But if there was a puzzle, it wasn't a challenging one. Plus, look at that villain's tribe. They were probably going to lose challenges.
Yes, so, that too.
We get to... No.
Oh, if I could make a quick note about the challenges. I'm not positive if it was... Well, there's the one where they actually exchange it, but I'd like, they have the bowling challenge, which is only, maybe slightly better than the Token Sheen Shuffleboard challenge. And even though it's not something particularly physical, the villains really, again, just do terribly. And I wonder, are the heroes better at bowling because they are lame people and have lame hobbies?
It's possible. I do love how coach is like, oh no, we certainly couldn't use Courtney and Sandra on rolling a freaking ball.
Right, not only was it a bad idea because of,
it's a reward challenge versus immunity,
all of that, but it's not even really strength, but they're not 12-pound bowling balls, or whatever, that they're going to be too big for them. It was just... And
they were giving you a gift. This is the one you can hide them on. And he's like, I hear you guys are good. And then you said you were good at this, right? And then, of course, Parvati and Danielle both failed to hit a single pin.
Right. And also getting all mad at them because they weren't enthusiastically volunteering for the challenge. But we don't need to get into that.
No, actually, that's a good point, because that gets back to my point about how Sandra's edit is starting to rise. Because in there, they allow Sandra to rebuke them. And she's not going to take that, because they're just trying to do that thing where you talk about somebody in their presence, but you're not really talking to them. And she's not going to have that. And she stops them. It's like, why are you talking about me? Why are you blaming me? Is it my fault that you guys couldn't do it? And that's just, I think, symbolic. And it shows that Sandra, despite what everybody likes to say, frankly, including Sandra, is not just sit back and anybody but me. She is an active player. She just doesn't seem as active as other players, which is part of her strategy. And it's, the difference between maybe under the radar and just kind of there and people aren't voting for you. And I think there's a key distinction when it comes to Sandra. And, maybe other people who've won, but maybe not everybody who won. I'm still fighting that battle, apparently. All right,
so Matt is saluting you.
So we're at the merge, and as I was saying about Russell, he lies all the time, and it seems like it's successful because he does trick some people, but it doesn't seem to take people very long to be around Russell and think, this guy ain't right. So how much credit do we give Rupert for cluing in on that? Or is it just because Sandra told him?
Yeah, it's because Sandra told him.
All right, then obviously, he's the only person who got information from anybody else. But he listened, and he believed her right away.
That was very good. Good job, Rupert. Why do I keep mixing up their names?
Because they start with the same two letters.
Yeah.
And you don't like either one of them.
Yeah.
But I think he deserves the tiniest bit of credit. That between that and just kind of the vibe he was getting from Russell, he knew right away that JT's cockamamie scheme isn't going to work. And part of the reason why I want to give him credit is because you contrast it with JT, who just desperately could not admit to that. And I wonder if it's that he was truly believed that Russell was, a good old boy that never lied to him, or is it that he needed to believe that? Because the alternative is that he had just done something so stupid that he just couldn't let him believe that.
I think it's even if he wasn't realizing, I do think a lot of it is just sort of once you've made that decision, you just have to believe. You can't go back on that. You just have to believe that's the case. Otherwise, because there's nothing really he can do either. It's not like he can be can I have that back? Actually. To use a poker term, he probably thought he was pot committed at that point. It's just I got to do it, too much money. But, some poker, you're not yet pot committed. And Rupert was able to dial it back. It's you know what? We don't have to just do that. We could do something else.
Now, if these weren't the heroes, if they weren't, these self-described heroes and they had to play in such an honorable way, the perfect play would have been to vote for Russell, right?
Yeah. It's it's voting for Matt Alrod.
I'm glad you said that because it would make me seem like I'm just trying to bring up that guy again. But
right.
Yeah, and no, to be fair, that had not happened, so that wasn't part of the playbook.
They didn't have, the map for that, but that's the move.
Yeah, but at this point, you don't need Russell's vote. You just need him not to vote for you. You just need one more than the other tribe. And if he's going to vote for somebody else, if he's going to vote for Parvati, like he says he is, great. But he's not going to play the idol because he thinks he's with you. And they should have been, as much as he's lying to them and trying to be on his side, they should have been, and maybe they were, but we don't see this. They should have been lying to him throughout the whole time. Oh, yeah, Russell, you're in with us, and we're voting for Parvati.
Plus,
maybe not.
If they voted for Russell, I bet Sandra flips right then.
Yeah, that's the other thing. We shouldn't give Rupert too much, room because he never seemed to go back to Sandra. It's like, hey, want this?
Right. It's like, yeah, sure, Russell listened, but it seemed like he could have done a little more to do something about it besides let's maybe vote for someone who won't be given an idol. That's the only thing. Is it? Is that the only thing you could do?
Yeah, and maybe there just wasn't opportunities to go talk to Sandra again. As Sandra says when she's talking to Rupert, she can't be seen with him. But I imagine there's probably some time. But they were talking about voting out her. Everybody, right. I think before they even went there, it was it's Sandra, right? Sandra. And I think for a second, maybe Jerry, and Colby's like, yeah, sure, Jerry.
Yeah, he's like, I don't care. I just didn't want to say it because I thought you guys would think I had sour grapes still. So
yeah, but I tried to vote her out of All Stars, and I'm going to do it again. But yeah, it just never seems to be this opportunity to bring Sandra in, which obviously will be the broken record that we're going to get into for the next little bit. I think so much as that is JT. I think Rupert probably, give him some level of credit. I think he listened to Sandra, took that information in, and actually figured some stuff out. And the thing about the whole move, everything that's going to go down, the hero still played it right. But actually, before we get into that, let's talk about it because this is the highlight of the episode, this podcast, the season. Oh,
our lives.
Yes, perhaps Survivor. Parvati playing the double idol. Great move or the greatest move? It was a question I was posing to you.
I know. I'm thinking.
Silent thinking.
Sorry. That's how my brain works. It's very, very, very good. Very great.
So my reaction as I'm watching Heroes Live, Heroes versus Villains, as it airs, as I have every season of Survivor since it started.
Hey, same.
That's right. Fist bump again. I was skeptical of Parvati. Coming in through Cook Islands, I didn't think much of her. I didn't really see why she was cast in Micronesia. Throughout Micronesia, obviously she justified that. But even still, as it was going, I always kind of, I felt like more the narratives of Suri. I thought Amanda was going to beat her. I thought, I respected her more, especially because she was portrayed as a threat. But still, I wasn't fully on board with Parvati. And then, obviously, as this season goes, she's running opposed to my favorite player, who seemed to, have her, beat. Once this tribal council was over, I remember literally standing up and applauding, and was just,
what a nerd.
Yeah, I think hopefully I was alone, but
what a loser.
My wife might have been there, but she knows who I am.
Well, at least you were already married.
Yeah, for quite some time. But I was so impressed, and I was basically on the Parvati bandwagon from then on.
Well, welcome aboard. Because I didn't. She was like Amber in Micronesia. No one was like, oh, yes, this is perfectly sensible casting. Everyone, she was such a star in Cook Islands. It just wasn't, there's always one of those. It's fine. But yeah, no.
She was the Foxy Boxer. Remember Parvati Foxy Boxer?
She was 23 years old. That
Oh no, I don't judge her choices as a person, but like that's what her role was.
That was her role, yeah.
Like, Parvati, or and most people like poverty is what they called her, and then it's like Foxy Boxer. That's who she was.
That's even it's actually Jason Siska in Micronesia when they're doing the schoolyard pig. So this is when she's a favorite. Is like says poverty, and she's like, it's Parvati. I'm sorry. And so then she got her revenge. But yeah, no, I mean, I love Suri obviously because I'm a human in Micronesia, but like I was definitely like, Black Widows all up in this and was full on like totally in the tank for Parvati in Heroes versus Villains. Like, did I wish that there was more Courtney involved? Sure. But otherwise, like I was, Parvati all the time. And so this was great. It was a great moment of celebration for me, for America.
No, America was crying because the heroes were taken down, and the player of the season, Rupert.
Not my America.
Yeah, well, there's two Americas, as being seen in what's going on in other channels that you're not watching right now. Maybe it's over. I don't know, time zones. But
yeah, I don't know. Okay.
But for us blue staters,
you're Canadian.
I know. Blue doesn't begin to describe it.
Indigo.
But I think it was a great movie. I think as time has gone by, people are trying. There's a slight undercurrent. They're like, hey, it wasn't that smart to move. Of course, how could she do anything other? And that's like watching years ahead and like post Tony, post people who've seen what Parvati did. No. At the time, this was revolutionary, and it's still huge. People don't give up their idols all the time. Obviously, it had happened successfully in this season, but the fact that she had two, and she did it in that way, because she went all out for broke to win, and it wasn't just natural. I think a lot of people would have played it for themselves. Russell will play an idol for himself later this season. Russell, the god of idols, played them, wasted them for himself far more often than he's ever played them successfully. Maybe not far more often. It might be 3-2.
Slightly more often.
Yeah, it's like that shows like people get it wrong, and this was a huge risk.
Yeah.
Maybe Amanda is telling her the truth. I mean, probably not. We'll get into that in a second. But maybe she's wrong. Maybe it's coming back at her. Maybe they're voting for Russell. Like if it just says JT took a huge risk, Parvati was taking a big risk. The big difference is she's doing it with some evidence.
Yes.
And that shows why she had this awesome move and he didn't. And yeah, I think it's huge to figure out that it's those two. Obviously, she got the lucky break. That it's Danielle, but it's not completely lucky because Parvati let it be Danielle.
Right. That's actually, and that's one thing is I should have sent this to you earlier, but that I noticed when watching is if Parvati wins that challenge, which she, who knows how long they could have both been trying to figure out how to phrase it. How long they could have both been on that pole.
Obviously phrasing. I hope you're all saying phrasing, but we knew the phrasing.
Yeah, how long they could have been on the pole. But like they seem to be doing just fine,
Parvati actually seemed to be doing better than Danielle.
Like Parvati has done very well at these types of challenges. She does yoga like a lot. She's very good at balancing and stretching, whatever.
She's got good body balance throughout.
She's like hanging
maybe somebody else there that might have been top heavy. Yeah, no, I mean it was remarkable to the point where they all had to mention it. How she's just got like one little foot and just kind of
she's just like chilling. Got to try different ways to hold on. I just almost said something that would have been bad phrasing again. But yeah, if she had won. Oddly enough, if she had won immunity, her move wouldn't have been possible.
I think it actually all falls apart.
Yeah,
and,
because 3 people to choose from, that's too much of a risk. And then
obviously, she could give up the necklace, but that's not going to work. People aren't going to think that they fooled Russell and Parvati into that it's going to be Parvati, so they won't, try the counter moves or anything like that. Yeah, she needed to be available for the vote in order for the vote to not be on her. So, and I wonder, if she worked it out. I've never heard in an interview that she has, unlike, how we know that Richard worked it out, that he needed to lose and he needed Kelly to win.
Because she did kind of, she offered, like she says, like she says, do you think I should win to Danielle? Which is kind of hilarious. And Danielle's like, well, I think I should win because you have the idol. And it's like, yeah, she chooses to step down, but if she's really nervous, she could have just hung out on there. Like, I feel like Danielle would forgive her, like they were a fairly tight alliance. I don't think you're gonna like break up because you decided to stay in an immunity challenge or something.
Now, would it be impossible? Maybe she's just, guesses that it's not Sandra or something and goes Jerry Danielle. But same time, maybe then you don't risk it. You're just like, what? I can ride these two idols out, because at some point, like earlier in the episode, that was her idea. Like, she didn't come into this merge realizing that she was going to do that. And I think it's because, it lined up the way it did. That, it's like, okay, it's obviously not Russell. It's obviously not me because of, Amanda's terrible acting. It can't be Danielle. So, it's a high risk play, but the percentages are much lower than they would have been in another scenario.
Right.
Let's talk about Amanda for a bit.
Oh, Amanda, she tries so hard.
It's just, indicative of her entire run as Survivor, and I think it's because it's indicative of the human being that she is. And frankly, it's probably, says good things about the human being that she is. Yeah. That when it comes time to, look people in the eye and tell them that, something that's a lie, she's not good at that. Now, maybe some of it also says a bit, not as good things, that she wants to be liked. But and that's more specifically with her tribal council performances. But even here is that she just doesn't have the heart to fully commit to burning Parvati, even though that's what she's doing. She could have just aligned with Parvati and worked something out. But no, she's like, okay, we're gonna beat Parvati, and it's just not in her. The game ain't in her.
Yeah. It's because Parvati has that prior relationship with Amanda. It's like, not only is Amanda not a great liar, but Parvati, has played this game with her all the way to the end, has seen how, she behaves in probably, similar situations, and able to pick up on that.
So here's another note about Amanda. Did she not tell the rest of her alliance that Parvati has an idol? Because Parvati told her that she has an idol.
Yeah, that's true. She did. Like right away too, which I'm not 100% sure on that move, but that's fine.
Well, it just shows that I think Parvati was looking for different angles, and also that she doesn't have everything masterminded, because very few people in Survivor ever does. You read the situations, you react as you need to do. It's not a criticism; it's just a reality of things.
Right. It's like everyone's been thinking, I'm gonna go and then pair up with everyone on Micronesia. The only one left was also my closest ally. Might as well check it out, see how things go.
But because the heroes clearly act as though they believe an idol will be played. They know that JT gave an idol to Russell. Right. But they don't seem to act like the potential. They don't, not even seem. They do not act at all like, oh my God, we're up against two idols.
Well,
because and if they did think that, I still think they do what they do. You still vote for, Jerry or Sandra. But it's never brought up, and it's just like, does Amanda think that she has Russell's idol? That's a weird jump to take. Like,
one thing is, and we didn't really talk about this, is that the heroes were very surprised to see both Russell and Parvati there. In theory, Russell has played his idol, and he claims Parvati also played one. Which also, can I just say, the way he explained how that happened was so dumb. Like, he's like, yeah, we stood up at the exact same time and like looked at each other, like, what? Like, let's play the idol. Like, the solution is so easy. Like, okay, yeah, I had that idol, so I stood up to play it, and Parvati obviously realized I'd be gunning for her, so it turned out she had an idol. What crazy town,
Yeah, well, that gets back to what I was saying earlier about Russell's lying.
It was so easy.
Is that I don't think he's actually as good at it as he thinks he is, and other people do. I think people know frequently that Russell is lying to them. They just don't act on that the proper way, and a lot of that is to his credit. And part of it's because, he just pushes and pushes and pushes and makes people uncomfortable, and people, won't go to his level because they know that that's not a winning way to play. But it's a way to beat you in a minor battle. Because I think just saying that, and then all of a sudden volunteering right away. I swear on my kids, that combined with Sandra's information did enough to make Rupert realize that this guy ain't right. And it's just, I think he always needs to tell the big lie. And that's not the successful way of lying. The way to get away with lying more is to keep it as true as possible. So that way you don't get burned by it later. It's some life tips for y'all.
I'm going to tell your wife you're giving a lying tip.
She'll hear it herself. She's like, I knew it. And baby, I'd never do that to you. That's not just how we act, and that's not how we operate. Or is that the truthful lie?
Wow.
But and it's just like, this is the guy that had to tell everybody in Samoa that he was like a 9/11 firefighter or something.
Katrina survivor.
Yeah, and then he does the dog, and it's just like he just always has to burn his big tails to feed his own ego. And so a pedestrian, just me playing my idol and then she playing her idol. No. It's got to be a bigger story. Oh my God, this is going to be the most epic moment of Survivor ever, and they're going to respect me for it.
Which, no votes at that point had never happened before. That's still a really big deal.
Yeah, and it's just simple. And then also I don't think they picked up on this. I think he got the mechanics of it wrong. Although maybe it's fair to him, he wouldn't know. Yeah. I do believe they still get to vote, right?
I think what he said actually was that then they re-voted. So I think he is saying that there were no votes, so that they re-voted. Couldn't vote for that. And he said Courtney voted for Jerry and everybody else voted for Courtney.
Right, but he said that he and Parvati weren't allowed to vote, which I don't think that's true.
Yeah, I couldn't. Yeah,
in a normal tie situation, but anyway, that's
but they wouldn't have been tied.
Criticism I've ever had.
Right, that's reasonable. Whatever.
But I agree. Like, he is so close, but he just had to put that extra little flourish in there that I think helps set off people's BS detectors. Unless you're JT, you're just like, nope. He's good. Because if he isn't, I'd be the dumbest person ever, and I'm going home.
He has a Southern accent. He must be great.
Yeah, nobody in the South has ever done anything wrong, I believe. I mean, I haven't read all of American history, although probably more than a lot of people watching this, sadly.
Nobody who speaks German could possibly be an evil man.
Perfect, exactly. So, we talked about the move, but just the tribal council itself. It won the bracket that we had this year about the ultimate tribal council, and it's a great one. I don't know if it's the best one. I believe I probably voted for other things in the matchups, but
Snakes and Rats, maybe.
Yeah, I actually definitely voted for that one. I might have voted for something else of it.
I can't remember what your punditry was at the time,
but it's still great because they just set it up so well. Obviously, so much of it is just the anticipation of, my God, what's going to happen. But even just early on, like Rupert and the stupid bananas.
I was going to say, can we briefly talk about the weird, added, come on. Also,
ripe bananas. And even Sandra's like,
they're eating our food. There's twice as many of you now. You're gonna eat more food. You're voting them out. Chill.
Yeah, and
get some bananas at home.
They're
not even that good.
It's an example of dumb Rupert, but it's also just like a nice little look into Survivor politics and dynamics that anything these people who I'm geared up to beat do is going to annoy me and become a big deal. And then especially if you're Rupert. So that's funny. I think Probst
also,
gets
I have
off.
A banana stress ball.
I can't believe you're touching even something vaguely banana shaped because, the texture.
It's from the American Cancer Society.
And we, on the Purple Rock podcast, I'm going to come out and make a very controversial statement. We're anti-cancer.
We are. We're so brave. Really.
But I think that's a great moment. I think Probst gets off a great joke about Parvati when she's talking about how nobody wants to talk about her. It's like, is that just because you're used to so much attention in your real life?
It's a good burn, and it's probably it's a good burn and probably pretty true.
Yeah, and Parvati, because she's awesome, is able to play it off like ha ha ha. Yes, but no. So yeah, and that's a great little release of tension. And you just have these moments, and then when they show the votes, it's fantastic.
It's so good.
So they have Jerry saying, I hope I don't see any votes for me tonight. Somebody voting for Jerry.
Yeah.
And then Candace is like, we're voting for you because we don't think you're the least likely to get an idol.
Which, can I just say, like, also, I mean, it's very possible, very, very feasible that Rupert just, got the vote off Sandra because he likes her. But like, just to further show ineptitude of the heroes, like, if Jerry's not the least likely who would be given an idol, it's Sandra. She's not even in their alliance.
Yeah.
Like, she's just also a villain. Like, that's it. She's not even in their alliance. Anyway,
but they don't know that because it was a women's
don't.
alliance and she's a woman, right? Russell is the one that's least likely, except that I guess he is. And all that. Like, yeah, it's like, what information are you using here?
Yeah.
Because, if you believe Sandra, you can just get rid of Sandra and then you have numbers. Again, like we said, you could have just turned around and voted for Russell. And, it's win-win. Either he is involved in the tie or, he votes with you, but sorry, buddy, we don't need you anymore. You didn't do your job, which was to take somebody out with an idol. Yeah. So I think it is a tremendous tribal council, and the tension's all there. And then when the vote reveals start to happen, and actually when she pulls out the idols is so great because they're like, yeah, we knew she had an idol, and then she gives it to Sandra. Everything's fine. Everything's good.
Cool. This is good. This is fine.
Every smug looks, and then one for Jerry, and boom.
Which, I mean, also shows like the one thing that, she could have done, but takes so much foresight, especially when you already have it in your head. I'm going to play 2 idols. This is going to be fine. Like, to be like, they seem fine with this. Perhaps like, sorry, Sandra, JK. Looks like you're...
although I wonder if you can do that. They would be like,
that's true. That's a good point. That's a good point. So, if she had been like, I'm going to play these idol for Sandra. Wait, you know what? Oh, no, scratch that. They seem too happy. Jerry. There's the faces falling that I wanted to see. That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, or at the very least, Sandra, and you don't get the reaction. It's like, okay, now I got to play the second one.
That's true. And maybe that's what she was doing. We don't know.
But I'm guessing not, because she was sitting, she probably couldn't see the reactions. Whereas when Tony would do it many years later, so again, he gets the benefit of evolution.
Gets the perspective. Yeah. Like with Mike improving on the Three Amigos thing.
Exactly. So I'm not a criticism at all. I guess it would just be the one thing that could have made it slightly better, but it's
but still
perhaps the best thing ever. And and just their faces falling, and JT getting the Mr. Krabs thing, and just what a light is swirling here. And when the Jerry votes are coming in, and she's just like, she's so wonderfully expressive. It is fantastic.
And the weird Rupert banana thing also shows, like, as much as we see it out of context and gifts a lot, Parvati doing like, well, I'd hate to watch, it'd be no fun to watch, green bananas turn yellow without my debaucherous little villains, which sounds like something she would have been like planning, but like the banana thing hadn't come up yet, like she would have never known that. So all hail Parvati.
The only thing that maybe puts a little sour note on this tribal council is JT's final words.
Yeah.
So I didn't actually even really register this when I watched it 5 years ago, and I think
I can't remember, like, I honestly just can't remember.
Yeah. And I think that probably speaks to societal norms. Just like, okay, it's just a good old boy saying stuff. But for people that don't know what we're talking about, as he's saying that, it's like, that's why you don't trust a villain, and you especially never trust a woman. And you're just like, oh, JT.
And JT, that's not even why you got voted out. You weren't trying to trust any women. You tried to trust Russell. Russell screwed you over. Russell gave the idol to Parvati. Why is Parvati supposed to do anything for you anyway? You were never on your side. Apparently, none of you were ever even talking to her. Sandra, a woman, tried to help you out. You guys didn't listen. I mean, Rupert kind of listened, but you guys didn't listen enough to try to bring her in or try to trust her. So
she would have been that 6th vote you were looking for.
You got your own dang self voted out, JT.
Yeah, and maybe at the time you're just like, oh, people say a lot of things when they're voted out. And sure, I'll even say that now. Like, does this mean that JT's an awful person? Not necessarily, but I do think that this reveals a lot about him, and especially, for our purposes and what's pertinent, how he played his entire game. This whole never trust a woman, that's not just something that comes out because, as you say, you weren't burned by the women, you were burned by Russell. Your whole thinking, and you couldn't stop thinking about the fact that it was women, and even completely allowing that is a fine assumption to make based on things. If you had just not always thought that women are trouble, the one thing that you can't control, you wouldn't be in this situation, JT. Also, I guess it probably tells us why he decided to get rid of Stephanie. Probably shows why he flipped out to get rid of Suri. Probably shows why he couldn't wait to get rid of Candace. JT's got some issues, and hopefully, he's a married man now. Some time has gone on, but I think it's instructive, maybe a bit, how misogyny hurts everyone.
Right, and I mean, as you said, like he's gotten married, has presumably matured. I mean, we don't know.
Nobody's ever been misogynist and married at the same time.
Right, like there are certainly a lot of people. Okay, I tried to look up his age, and apparently there's a football player named JT Thomas. So, but what I was going to say is I'm pretty sure, especially because this was not long after Tocantins, that JT was still like pretty young. Like he was maybe like my age during Heroes versus Villains, and there's a lot of dumb boys my age too.
Yeah, and like as you said, like it didn't register as hard with us, the first time we watched it. To the point where I didn't recall it happening, but this time it was just like, why'd you have to go and ruin it, JT?
Yeah.
But more importantly, I just think it probably reveals why he screwed up so badly. Because maybe it's just why he didn't believe Sandra and why he had such faith in Russell. Because it's like, us good old boys, we know. And if you go back to Tocantins, it's like, he kind of did have more success winning over men than women. No, he had success winning over everybody. But, I don't know if anybody loved him like, Coach loved him or how much Fishback loved him. So I don't
think anybody loves anyone as much as Coach and Fishback loved JT. So that might be an unfair, standard.
I don't know. Coach loving Rob. Well, he didn't let JT get voted out, and it would have been so much easier. Whereas, he was a weak little man when it came to Rob. Quick little note. And, if he were to ever come back to Survivor, hopefully he's grown up a bit in that area.
I just hope that he's changed in some way. Yes. When he plays the game,
hopefully. And to get back just to the tribal council and how Parvati talks about how nobody will talk to her and Probst epic burn. I just kind of wanted to talk about that a bit because I think for the rest of the game, it's instructive to watch why Sandra won and why Russell lost is pretty easy. But
we know why.
We're going to be counting it down anyway because it's just so ridiculous as it goes. But why Parvati lost? Because nobody worth talking to, I think, argues that Russell should have won Heroes versus Villains. The people that think Sandra should not have won will argue that Parvati should have. And I'll admit, as I was watching, felt like I would have voted for Parvati.
Same.
But I think that there was a bit of evidence there, and I just picked up on it this time. Is that I think she took it too personally that people were opposed to her, and she sees her name on that letter and then gets a bit of the cold shoulder. And I think how that happened is then she became very us versus them throughout the entire time. And this is the start of her basically building zero bonds with the rest of the heroes who will make up the majority of the jury. What do you think?
Because she's, a lot of our confessionals from Parvati, even from the beginning, have always been like, why are people always after me? Like, I don't understand why everyone is always after me. Because, in the real world, her charisma is not a bad thing. So she yields positive results from it. And, Jeff alludes to it with his joke. And one of our commenters, and unfortunately, I cannot remember who said it, and I'm terribly sorry, but someone made the point that, this is probably the first time in Parvati's life that hasn't, worked out. Because even in Micronesia, she wasn't really a big star on Cook Island. So, Penner, who would play, somehow clued into the fact that she.
Well, because he'd been
threat.
around her. I think if you're around
but-
Parvati, you recognize what effect she has on people, and
Right.
then once you played a bit of Survivor, you recognize how dangerous that effect could be. So yeah,
especially once she
with
knows knows the game now, whereas
Yeah.
Cook Island, she didn't know what's going on.
And then also, I think Penner just, I mean, it was just personal. Like, I don't, he might have just been lying about her being a
That's
threat
true.
just because, you know, he probably didn't like her because,
Right.
you know, they
She
did
wasn't
not
very nice
treat
to
him well.
No, they did not.
Yeah, and to your point, like in Cook Island, she was riding high and in control until she wasn't. Like, you know, the white tribe was controlling things until it went there. So, you know, her personal charisma actually worked really well for her. She had, you know, Nate and Adam doing what she needed them to do. We didn't get as much of that.
Even while Adam is like making out with Candace on the side.
Yeah, he's like, three-way. Or, you know, when Candace is on the other side, you know, it's
right.
like, yeah, you know, it's okay.
And Parvati is sort of like flirtily, but it's also like, okay, this is weird, but I'm going to walk away now.
Yeah. So, yeah, I think to your point, this is probably the first time even in Survivor that she was truly confronted with that because, you know, as Micronesia progresses, once, you know, she wins the battle against Penner early, and then, you know, he's taken from the game, you know, people flock to her, you know, like, and
right. And I think when you're, you know, super charismatic or charming or whatever, you don't necessarily realize like that's why people like you. You know, you think like, oh, I'm, you know, fun to be around. I'm a good person or whatever. You know, people like me, and it's not just like that. I have this, you know, sorceress effect. You're just like, yeah, okay, I'm cool. Like that's great. And yeah, that said of like, you know, people actively avoiding her, you know, being isolated and stuff. And we see this with, you know, misfit type people all the time who have people not talk to them on Survivor, and it doesn't feel good to them either, and we feel bad for them. But a lot of times those are people who've probably experienced it in real life too. So it's like, it sucks, but they're also like, well, I made it through middle school. I can make it through this. Whereas Parvati is probably like, what is happening? Why doesn't anyone want to hang out with me?
Yeah. And on a human level, I get it. I think that she's just completely having a human reaction to her. I think her feelings are hurt. And I think one of the ways Parvati reacts to people hurting her feelings is vindictive revenge, especially in a game that, you know, generally encourages that, right? She has the opportunity to make these people pay for making her feel that way. But I do believe, and, you know, this is something to watch for the rest of the time, that I think she took it too far. And that personal charisma that she has, she never really extends it to people outside of her circle. And I actually kind of think that's a bit of true of Parvati always. And it's probably true of her in her life. You know, it's probably why it feels so good to be welcomed into her circle, because it's given an air of exclusivity. And, you know, some of it obviously is also on the heroes, that they probably weren't that interested in developing a relationship with her. They felt burned by her. And, you know,
and for the same reason they weren't trying to talk to her in the first place.
Right. Yeah. But, you know, it's not their job to make her feel better so that she can win. It's her job to make them feel better so she can win, because, you know, she has to know that she's in a pretty good position now to do that, and they are not, and she doesn't. And I think, you know, we see in this episode where that stems from. I think it's personal. So for all of the great things that she did tonight or in these episodes and will continue to do throughout the rest of the season, I think this is her fatal flaw and why ultimately she doesn't win. She just doesn't make those people like her enough.
Yep.
All right, so yeah, I know. I sometimes just feel like I gotta let somebody else say something, because, you know, it just feels better when I finish my great, you know, flourish, and then just so
I mean,
that's
I
enough.
already said a lot about the topic, so I don't know what.
Anything else for these these 3 episodes?
I don't think so.
I think we covered it.
Yeah.
So next week we'll be back on Wednesday night talking about the next 3 episodes of Survivor's Heroes versus Villains. And I gotta say, these on the high scale of everything that's going on in Heroes versus Villains, these are probably the lullish episodes. So we're trying to get rid of. It's good that we're gonna kind of get them all at once. Now, it's a sliding scale. For, you know, the lull episodes of Heroes versus Villains are still probably better than most other ones.
Every episode in Nicaragua.
Exactly. The best
Like
episode of Hero of
alone.
Nicaragua. I don't think that thing exists, even though math suggests that there
Yeah,
should
what would
be
it
one
even
better.
be?
It's all a tie for suck.
Nothing comes to mind.
Clearly, it was the episode when two people just up and quit right before
Oh,
the
yeah.
end of the game. It was probably the last one because that meant it was over.
Yeah.
All right, so you can listen to this podcast if you aren't watching it on video on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play. Obviously, it is on YouTube, and it will also be on our website. Where can they find our website?
PurpleRockPodcast.com.
And why should they find our website, Emily?
Because we are going to, A, we always have great content. But B, we post the podcast. We have great commenters, and this week we'll have a little special surprise in the podcast post. What is that surprise, Andy?
It's a surprise to me because I was going to post it next week, but we will have it now.
Never mind. Well, then why did you say why should they come?
Because of the great commenters, Emily. Because of the great commenters. Yes.
Okay, fine. Great commenters, and tune in next week and find out what'll appear then. Ooh.
Are you gonna make me edit this episode between you and my kid? But nope. The reason why we're doing it this summer is you get it, warts and all. This is what it's like to be a lazy Survivor podcast, which I'm sure there are no other lazily edited ones anywhere on iTunes. But yeah, great community. Leave your comments about this episode. Let us know what we got wrong. It's possible that I've allowed room for conversation this week instead of just ranting at you over the greatness of one particular person over the others. You can find us on Twitter. I'm Purple Rock Andy. The show is Purple Rock Pod, and you are
Purple Rock Emma.
There's also a few others on our site that are there, but they're not here, so I'm not promoting them. Honestly, that's probably enough plugs. People probably stop listening before we ever start. So what do you think? We should pretend that there'll be theme music playing right now.
Yep, theme music.